So I'll give a little bit of background on why we funded this study. High air pollution exposure is a concern in California, and this is particularly important for under-resourced communities. Health impacts from high air pollution exposure, asthma is one of the impact, and it's not only health-related impact, there's also economic impacts from high air pollution exposure in communities across California. There are studies that have found that air pollution can increase asthma symptoms and asthma onset. So, because there is a link of asthma related to high air pollution exposure, we funded this study to look at this impact. This study is very unique. The way it is designed, digital sensors were used in this study. These sensors were fitted on inhalers to record the date, time, and location of the medication used. This provided a more complete health data than other studies completed before. This project has used advanced exposure model to look at the impact of air pollution on asthma symptoms. The results of this project has found that air pollution exposure can significantly increase asthma medication use in California. It has provided us with the information we need to use asthma medication as a viable and valuable metric for our regulatory health analysis. In the next few slides, I'm going to go over the biographies of our investigators. Dr. Jason Su is the principal investigator for this project. He is a senior researcher and principal investigator in the School of Public Health at the University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Su has experience in GIS, remote sensing, and programming skills to process large-scale land use, land cover, and remote sensing data. Using mathematical and machine learning algorithm, Dr. Su has looked at small area variations of environmental exposure modeling. In addition, Dr. Su has experience with machine learning model, biostatistics analysis skills for environmental AP studies, especially in modeling rescue medication use with data collected through smart sensors. Dr. Meredith Barrett from ResMed is our subcontractor for this project. She's the Vice President of Population Health Research at ResMed, which is a global digital health company focused on improving outcomes in respiratory disease and sleep. Using digital health data, she has worked on improving health outcome across multiple levels, individual clinical care, and also for communities. At Propeller, she has leveraged data from digital sensors to generate insights of how social and environmental factors such as air pollution and the built environment can influence the respiratory disease pattern. She's a key contributor to the Air Louisville program, which is a public-private partnership addressing asthma in Louisville, Kentucky. Dr. Shadi Ashlebag, she is a postdoctoral scholar with UC Berkeley School of Public Health in the Department of Environmental Health Sciences. She has worked on projects funded by Jet Propulsion Laboratory, NASA Office of Naval Research as a research assistant. Dr. Ashlebach has gained experience in the field of spaceborne and airborne remote sensing data analysis and algorithm development, and has also published 10 papers in the field of remote sensing data analysis. Today's agenda, our principal investigator, Dr. Su, will be presenting the literature review on behalf of Dr. Ashlebag, and then he will also present exposure assessment and environmental health analysis, followed by Dr. Barrett will present on the health data set and environmental health analysis. At the end, we'll have question and answer. So that ends my presentation. I will now hand over to Dr. Su for his presentation. Okay, wait.
Thank you, Nargis, for the introduction. I'm now trying to share the presentation. Just give me a second.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we can see your slides.
Okay.
Just make it out. Yeah, you can see the full screen now.
Yeah, again, thank you. Thank you for your time for attending today's seminar. The title of the research project is Source of Unrolled Vehicle Emissions and the Impacts on Respiratory Disease Symptoms in California. So it's funded by California Air Resources Board. ID is 19RD004. So this is a collaboration between UC Berkeley and ResMed. So the first task, what we are doing is for literature review on the impact of pollution on acute, because the research we are doing is for acute effects. So what we are doing also is identify the acute effects from air pollution, but the outcome is a little bit different, is ED visit, hospitalizations, and also potential mortalities as death. For literature review, so UC Berkeley conducted a systematic literature review. So we identify impacts from unrolled vehicle emissions, including unrolled and also non-exhaust pollutants on sub-acute respiratory disease symptoms. As I said, main health outcomes investigated, including the emergency department visits, hospitalizations, and mortality from asthma and COPD. So for our literature review, we reviewed papers published after January 1st, 2000. They were written in English. So we used the databases, including those from PubMed, Medline, Web of Science, and also Google Scholar. The pollutants, what we investigated, including PM 2.5 and PM10, NO2, O3, SO2, and also some of the trace metals. But over here for this research, we're only focused on PM 2.5, NO2, and O3 in our actual research. We grouped all the literature results into 3 age categories. One is adults, another one is children, and also some of them without distinction between adults and children. It's all categories. We performed standardization of the results because some of them are using relative risk, some of them use odds ratios and the different measures. So we converted all of them to odds ratios so that can be compared and also be pooled to identify the overall results. So this one shows you is the effect from PM 2.5. On left side of the tables are the effects of individual research results. On the right side of the figure is the pooled analysis. Basically, you can see for adults, children, all are all significant, so about 1. For PM10, for the pooled analysis, you can see for adults and children, the effect, some of them are significant, some of them not. So the pooled effect seems non-significant overall, but for all age categories, it seems significant. For NO2, for children, relatively have higher, I'm talking about the pooled analysis now. For NO2, the pooled analysis showed for children have relatively high impact on the acute symptoms. For adults, overall or pooled effects is non-significant, but for all, that's significant. For ozone, the ozone effect seems bigger than other pollutants, but for adults are greater than children and all. This is for SO2, it also showed significant poor effect for children a little bit higher than other categories. So the summary of literature review is that from the table, you can see for all the pollutants studied, they largely showed significant effect. So it's right now I want to get your attention a little bit to adults, because for the studies we use the rescue inhalers or smart sensors, because they require you have the phones associated with you. So most of our subjects are adults. So you just go to the middle row of the results. From the pooled analysis, you can see PM 2.5 for adults. There are over pooled effect is not significant, but majority of them within the studies are significant. For PM10 is also non-significant for the pooled analysis. For NO2 it's similar, but for ozone and SO2 they are all significant positive effect. So that's literature review for what we have done. And the second task is a big task. So it includes exposure assessment, generation of health data set, and analysis of health effects. So first, I want to talk is the comprehensive data source for exposure assessment. Okay. If you have questions, please put your questions at the chat box. So this have a lot of data sources. I will try my best to convey what we have done to you in a plain language, if possible. So the study region is the entire state of California. Over on the right side, we used one indicator that's important. So I want to introduce that concept first. So we divided or separate the entire state of California into 3 categories. One's the GMC, called goods movement corridors. On the right side, they are red. So basically, the locations allows you have not only the normal traffic, but also the truck traffic. So heavy truck traffic going through the road segments. Those are the goods movement corridors. And the non-goods movement corridors are those places allows traffic, but does not allow the heavy truck traffic. You can see the on the right side for Oakland. So 580, the small proportion being chopped off. What I want to show you is because those are the small proportion, even though they're all 580, right? And they were chopped off because that section does not allow heavy truck traffic. So there are NGMC, so that's not GMC, so they're not a goods movement corridor, but non-goods movement corridor. So another category is control areas. Those are the areas other than the goods movement corridor and the non-goods movement corridors. So that is the location category. Location category what's used as a predictor, but also have other impact, other usage too. I will introduce those concepts to you. Now, predictors, because we are developing daily non-user regression models. So one thing we used is a remote sensing data, because they have non-stopping coverage for any location in California. So we use ozone monitoring instrument for NO2. It's a little bit coarse for 27 kilometer spatial resolution, but non-stopping coverage or continuous coverage. For PM 2.5, we use MAC 1 kilometer resolution, errors or optical depths. For ozone, we also used ozone monitoring instrument. So it's around 27 kilometer resolution, but the daily continuous coverage. So remote sensing is one of the predictors. The second significant predictor is the traffic, daily traffic. So daily traffic, what we acquired is from Caltran PEMS system. So they have the daily traffic across 12 districts in California. So but for those traffic measurements on California highways and major roadways, there are around 40,000 individual detectors. Those 40,000 individual detectors cover about 5% of California highways. So how to assign the traffic using those 5% of the roadways to the entire California highway and major roadways. So we based on the matching criteria, gradually releasing or relaxing, but gradually relaxing the restriction on the assignment process. So because the data provided by Caltrans, so have route information, county information, district information, route type, and a day. So for us, if you have all those information, you find the one with smallest distance to the locations without measurements, right? So then all the ones within route, county, district, route type, and a day will be assigned. If for some reason they could not be assigned, use those comprehensive restrictions, then you relax the condition a little bit. So some of they have the same condition, but they're different counties, like 580 in Alameda, 580 in Contra Costa. So basically, so the same route, same district, same route type, same day, but the county is different. But we assume if they're very close, the traffic counts should be similar. So we relaxing that condition, remove the county for those road segments could not be assigned, use the condition. So we just keep going this way, relaxing the conditions until all the road segments have been assigned traffic. So, but we never relax the condition, use all the traffic within all the counties to assign to another county. So we never relaxing that to get rid of route type. We do not want misassignment. So we always kept the route type conditions over there. For day, we have maximum 1 day deviation. So that's the way how the traffic were assigned. So this table, you can see, we normally take 5 steps. So most is 8 steps, but once you got most of them, once you go through the 5 or 6 steps, so are assigned for all the road segments. That's once you reach 100%, so that means the road segments traffic are assigned. So because traffic is one of the predictors, if you are familiar with linear use regression modeling, one of the important factor, the consideration in doing linear use regression modeling is to trying to find the optimal distance of impact for the location with monitoring data, right? So because you want to find optimal distance, so for daily traffic, we create buffer distances from 50 to 2,000 meter and an interval of 50 meter. So now daily traffic, that means for each day for the traffic, so we'll have 40 predictors. But we'll talk about how we do data reduction, but right now it's just give you a concept, what's the size of the data would be once all the predictors are taken into consideration. That's daily traffic. Another one is the line cover database from USGS. So on the right side, you can see there are around 12 or 15 non-cover types. So for non-cover types, we also created buffers. So using 50 to 5 kilometer at an interval of 50 meters. So that's 100 predictors, or we say 100 covariates for each non-cover type. For non-cover types, there's one issue, like you say, for urban areas. The urban areas have developed open space, developed low intensity, and develop medium intensity, and develop high intensity. Especially for those develop medium intensity and develop high intensity, we could not distinguish what is actually not being used in those locations. If you see the figure in the middle, like in the middle, you see the Bay Area, and also in Southern California, Los Angeles area. So huge amounts of developed medium and high intensity. We don't know what's inside over there. So to further distinguish those small area variations of land use, so we used parcel level land use data. That data was provided by actually by CARB, California Air Resources Board. So basically compiled all the parcels data across entire California. So the data for land use data is at parcel level. We classified the land use data into residential, commercial, open, industrial, agriculture, government, institutional, and also the specific category, like roadways. It's also one of the categories we used. We converted them from vector to raster 30-meter spatial resolution because we are doing land use regression modeling. So we also create 100 buffers. It ranges from 50 to 5 kilometer and an interval of 50 meters. So for each land use, either have land use type, it will have 100 buffer statistics, right? So you can imagine how much data we are getting. Okay, now we also understand that the vegetation have a huge impact on the level of merged concentrations. Most time we believe, like for NO2, to have a huge absorption effect to reduce the level of NO2 and PM2.5, but for ozone it's opposite way. To identify the impact of vegetation, the vegetation, we used MODIS. Every 2 week vegetation index at a spatial resolution of 250 meters. So that's vegetation index. Then also we understand that meteorological conditions have a huge impact on the levels of concentration measured at the monitoring locations. So we also used grid MET as a daily for daily meteorological conditions at 4 kilometers. So it includes parameters like temperature, relative humidity, visibility, wind speed, pressure, all those kind of parameters. So those are the main predictors. What have we used? And there are also some called fixed or non-buffer, the traditional predictors, like innovation. We assume if you are at a higher innovation, you might have lower concentration and distance to coast. We all know in California, we have sea breeze effect. If you are farther away from the coast, you might have greater level of concentration of air pollution. And the distance to highways, distance to major roadway, distance to local roadways, but also cargo weighted. That means the distance to ports, but weighted by cargo amounts. And also the very important factor is the location category. As I said, goods movement corridors, non-goods movement corridors, and control areas. So those are the comprehensive data sources what we developed. So for the predictors plus the buffered statistics, we normally have around 4,000 covariates, or you can also say predictors. So how are you going to use that many predictors to do non-use regression model? So that has never been done before. So we develop a hybrid non-use regression model, and then use those models to generate air pollution surfaces across California. So I'm talking now for NO2 first. So the machine learning algorithm, what we used is the deletion, substitution, and addition algorithm. So we use V-fold cross-validation technique to reduce model overfit. So for NO2 modeling, so we have the outcome variables. Now because we are talking about exposure modeling, there is an outcome. It's the levels of air pollutant concentrations. So for NO2, you can see we have COB air quality monitors across California. Not only that, we have Ogawa air quality monitors. That is the saturation monitoring we have done throughout the years for Sacramento, for East Bay, in San Francisco Bay, and also for Los Angeles and San Diego. So that's the saturation, fixed saturation monitoring data we had used before. We used also in this COB research project. Another significant data source is the Google Street Car air monitoring. So the mobile, from 2015 to 2019, Google has very dense air quality sampling in the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles, and also the Central Valley. So these are three different data sources of air pollutants, or we say merged concentrations, right? So we designed a way how to merge those three types of air quality monitoring data into a single monitoring framework. But I will discuss those ones later. For NO2 data from COP, so roughly they have around 110 size for the years we modeled. For fixed site saturation monitoring, we used those ones in Alameda County, LA, and Sacramento. So the size range from 45 to 61. When you add up, so it's about 150 size. Some of them we didn't use, like those ones from 2006, 2007 for LA fund study, because they are out of study time period. We started for this research, we use those from 2012 to 2019. And also the Google mobile monitoring, so have forecasts to run from 2015 to 2019. The two issues that have very comprehensive, the very dense monitoring. I think the interval of sampling is 5 seconds. So there's a huge issue with Google mobile monitoring. So two, one is, like I said, they are sampled very densely, so have great spatial autocorrelation between the points being measured. So for us to reduce spatial autocorrelation to select representative points, so we select all the road segments had at least 100 kinds of measurements. And then within those road segments, with more than 100 segments, we used a location allocation algorithm to select around 150 sites within each region. Like for Alameda and Contra Costa, we select 50, 49, 49, and 50 respectively in GMC, NGMC, and the control. Sometimes our original design was to select 50, but sometimes if you could not get were too close, have high spatial coordination, you might not be able to select exactly what the amount you wanted. So, but we selected, you can see for the mobile Google Streetcar mobile monitoring, we select for the 4 regions. Each region is close to 150. So those 4 regions is around 600. So that's a lot of sites being used. For the location of location allocation algorithm, what we used is try to, as I said, get decoordinated, spatial decoordinated road segments, so that can be used in our 90 use regression model. Over here on the right side, I'm using the East Bay, so San Francisco Bay, East Bay, as an example. So when do location allocation algorithm, we try to locate the those road segments with more than 100 measurements or mobile sampling to be close to residential areas. So because we wanted to find the one with the impact on residential, on people, where people live, right? So that's a residential area. And also for us to deploy or place a road segment, or to select a road segment, the point is to select the locations as a greatest variation. So we used the previous NO2 concentration surface as a way to identify the level of change from one point to another. And then based on those 2 criteria, we selected close to 50 in good movement corridors and 50 in good movement corridors and 50 in control areas. So on the right side in the middle, you can see those ones selected for East Bay. We also did the same for like Los Angeles. You can see for Los Angeles, since the clustered together, but they're not, because it's a large Wasmer region for the Los Angeles. So in that way, we select around 600 mobile sites for our 90 use regression modeling. That for us, because we want to integrate carb air quality monitoring data with the our Ogawa saturation monitor data and the Google Streetcar monitoring data into a single monitoring framework. So you want to put them together. So there's one thing Carb raised before is, are they comparable, right? So we used Carb air quality monitor data as a gold standard. For the saturation, fixed site saturation monitoring data, we have published those ones. All the Ogawa saturation monitoring data, they have blanks, they have doubles, they have those ones co-located with government monitoring sites. So they not only they use like doubles to make sure they're comparable between different monitors within the same equation. We also have those co-located government sites to make us to compare with government size measurements. If they're not aligned exactly, we had the adjustments. So those are done. For the Google Streetcar mobile monitoring, they also had 2 or 3 cars always co-located or very close to the government monitoring sites. 2 or 3 days, they did the calibration, use the government monitoring data. But one thing for Google Streetcar measurements, not only the spatial or the coordination, but once we chose around 600 sites, those are basically decoordinated in spatial, but they are temporally still coordinated in a way they're not representing the daily average. The reason for Google mobile monitoring was that for every day for a region, they follow basically the same route. So if you go a location, you go a high traffic area like the rush hour, even though that road segment on average compared to other areas might be relatively low, but if you go through always at a rush hour, so you always have the higher traffic at that road segment you sampled. So for us to get rid of the daily trend impact to represent the overall daily concentrations, we use kind of detrend algorithm, make sure the Google mobile monitoring data are calibrated to the daily mean for those road segments, make sure they represent the daily statistics. So now those are the three types of air quality monitoring data. So once we made a correction or calibration, we could put them into a single data frame. But there's another issue. So data reduction, because what I said before, we have always, in my years of doing exposure modeling, we have always more than 3,000 predictors, or you can say covariates, if you wanted to be more strict, because like I said, one line use type, it has 100, if you go 50 meter to 5 kilometer at an interval of 50, so you have one variable, one predictor, you have 100 covariates. How, everything add up more than 3,000, how are we going to use this in the non-user regression model? So the first thing I did is through the data reduction strategy. So assume what we measure is NO2 concentration at a monitoring size, right? We select a predictor. Those predictor actually are covariates, have the highest correlation with the measured concentration at a monitor size. And you select that covariate, and then use that selected covariate to make a correlation matrix with all the other predictors, and then you get rid of all the covariates that have a correlation with the selected predictor over 0.9. So it's those ones, because they're too highly correlated with the first selected variable or predictor. So you remove those ones that have high correlation with that selected one. So you get rid of a lot. Okay, then for those ones still remaining, so you select the second covariate, has the highest correlation with the measured concentration. And then for the second selected covariate, then you get rid of all other covariates that had higher correlation with the second selected covariate. So in that way, once we are done with this kind of data reduction strategy, we normally had around 150 to 200 covariates being left, but we guaranteed those ones would have the highest combined effect in explaining the measured concentration without significant correlation between those covariates. So that's the data reduction strategy. If you still have issues, we can discuss this later when after the presentation. So for non-user regression model, another thing is to try to reduce the model overfit. As we all knew, you probably also knew that when you do a model evaluation, most people and a lot of modeling experts so use some kind of validation, but there's still a lot of people using all the observations, make a prediction, and use the same data set as a validation, or use 20, 25, 75. So those ones are still will somewhat create a model overfit. What we did is kind of V-fold. Over here, I use basically tenfold cross-validation and modern technique. So during the modeling process, because we have those ones from government continuous monitoring, of fixed site saturation monitoring, and the Google Streetcar mobile monitoring, we equally divided each monitoring type into tenfolds and then merge them into a larger tenfolds, make sure each fold has the same representation of each measurement type. So that's the merger of data set into the larger tenfolds. Then after that, we used for each fold, you used it as the validation set. You use the other 9 folds to build a model. Then it's shifted with a second fold as model evaluation, use the other 9 folds to build a model. So in this way, for a V-fold, a 10-fold cross-validation technique, so we repeat it 10 times. So each fold will be used exactly once as validation. And so there are 10 evaluations, right? But also for the modeling process, for the DSA model, we specify the maximum number of predictors could be maintained in the model. Normally, I chose 15. I don't want the model go far too complicated. It could not be explained. The maximum I use 15. So for each model, you basically have you have use one predictor. You have like those, okay, assume 150 predictors left, right? We maximum we select 15. So a model will build with one predictor, one predictor only, 2 predictors only, all the way up to 15 predictors only, different combinations. Which one would produce the least cross-validation error in the final model? So it's a it's a very time-consuming calculation process, but in that way, we got the model with the number of predictors. It's within 15, but has the highest prediction power in explaining the observed concentrations. But because we are also using the V-fold cross-validation, we have the least model overfit, because we always use our sample data to validate the model. So this is called V-fold cross-validation, DSA modern techniques. Using that technique, we predict or build daily models. For NO2, we have around 80% prediction power. This is super high for daily. If you see for annual, when you aggregate data, normal time you see a much higher prediction power, because those, you can say, sometimes you say it's noise, because when you go to daily, the variations are much bigger. So you think the voice would, the noise would be bigger. But for us, we can still achieve around 80% of prediction power for daily models. So these are the 3 services: the daily, and also the aggregated monthly and annual concentration for 2012. The services were built. We didn't use 30-meter spatial resolution as we did the modeling process, because we wanted to save the space. If you maintain 30-meter spatial resolution, 1 day of surface will cost more than 1.5 gigabytes. So that's huge. So we resampled that to 100 meter. So, the size reduced by more than half. So we did also similar for PM2.5. So PM2.5 have child EPA or CARB is around 115 size. The NO2, the daily model explain around 65% of adjusted R-squared. These are the daily services for one day, and monthly, and also aggregated annual services. So for ozone, we used similar techniques. There are around 185, 86 sites for Cal EPA. We also did saturation monitoring with assistance from Cynthia Garcia from COP. So that we got from 2016. We also used data from Google Street Car Mobile Monitoring for the 4 regions throughout California. So basically try to get it for each region, each location category around 50 sites. So the overall prediction power for ozone is very, very high. We've got 94% of the prediction power for ozone. So the daily concentration is on the left. Middle one is monthly concentration, and the right one is one sample of annual concentration. So this is the task 2. That's the major endeavor from our analysis. So we developed daily prediction models for the 3 criteria pollutants with adjusted R-squared around 80%, 65%, and 94%, respectively for NO2, PM2.5, and ozone. So the model performed significantly higher than normally could do because of our modeling technique. We also generate corresponding daily air pollution surfaces of resolution 100 meters across California for years 2012, 2019. So this data will be shared publicly very soon. Some of my research colleagues will already share them with the research. So we are shifting gear a little bit to the EEG analysis. This is not part of the contract, but COP has very strong interest because the overall goal for all the COP research projects was try to identify the disproportionate exposure for the vulnerable communities. So this one, what I show you for the EJ is, I want to show you the annual mean concentrations of NO2, PM2.5. Sorry, NO2, PM2.5, ozone, categorized by percentile. I'm not sure, can you see for the maps? Can you see those mesh nets? Some of them, if you present it at a high resolution, you might be able to see. But overall, it can see we'll have NO2 in the first column, PM2.5 second column, O3 in the third column. We have for San Francisco Bay, LA Metro, Sacramento, and Fresno. So we go to second row. You can see for LA Metro, so our highest concentration at downtown area and also some of the southern area. PM2.5 is similar, and to the right side is opposite. So for those ones with the mesh area, okay, I need to explain a little bit more about those mesh areas. Those are the EJ most disadvantaged communities as defined by Cal Enviro Screen. So Cal Enviro Screen defines those 25% of the census tract in California have a cumulative environmental score on the top 25%. Those are we call it disadvantaged communities or communities of impact. For the we further defined those 25 communities have the least community score environmental score would be classified as advantaged communities. In between 50%, they are the median. So basically what this wants to show you is that at the census tract level, for those disadvantaged communities, they are normally located at locations of high concentrations of NO2 and PM2.5, but the opposite when we talk about the ozone exposure, those places with high NO2 and exposures, NO2 and PM2.5 exposures of the disadvantaged communities, so normally have lower concentration of ozone. So this is a spatial distribution. We also assessed the association of race ethnicity at the census tract level with the air pollution. So air pollution, what we did is pollutant by pollutant. So for each census tract, we have the race ethnicity composition, right? That's provided by Cal Enviro Screen. But we have our modeled concentrations for NO2, PM2.5, and ozone. So the association between levels of pollutant concentration and the race ethnicity composition showed that for NO2, you can see on the right side, NO2 is blue. Okay, when you go from white, so white, that means the proportion of whites, right? To Hispanic, African American, and Asian American, you can see the impact getting higher. Right? That means the proportion, the higher proportion of whites are associated with lower concentration. When you go to Hispanic, Asian American, and African Americans, they're getting higher. For PM2.5, it's green. So still have similar, not exactly the same, but similar patterns with white have lower association. And the lower for ozone, now you can see it's totally opposite. For those census tracts with higher whites, so we'll have higher ozone exposure. So this are the Eeg analysis association between race ethnicity composition with air pollution separately for each air pollution. We also did the trend analysis. So that's the air pollution from 2012 to 2019 for each census tract. The trend of air pollution for NO2, PM2.5, and ozone. But we used air pollution, but also create an interaction. That's the interaction of year with disadvantaged status. So that's for the blue lines, there are the disadvantaged communities. The green ones are the median categories. For the red ones at the bottom, there are those advantaged communities. So for the interaction, the marginal effects of interaction for each category, you can see we go left side is for NO2, okay? NO2 is a slope. I'm not sure you can see that has a slope of negative 0.29, but you go to the advantage at the bottom is negative 0.21. So what we find is the pollutants or exposure people of those tracks, so all reduced from 2012 to 2019. So all reduced, but at a different rate. The interaction, what we did, found significant interaction with the with the disadvantaged communities have the greatest reduction, and those advantaged communities have the least reduction rate. So the interaction was significant. Because the advantaged communities have lower rate of reduction than the disadvantaged group have a highest rate of reduction. We find we can say the exposure to NO2 based on left figure, the EJ is lessening or is reducing from 2012 to 2019. For the middle figure, it's for PM2.5, that have similar effect, but the level of reduction in EJ is smaller than NO2, but we find that the interaction was still significant. That means there are significant difference. And the third one, okay, is very, very interesting on the right side, is the ozone. Okay, as I said, blue on the top is for disadvantaged communities, right? So blue is for the disadvantaged communities that have an increase, but the increase rate is much smaller than the advantage group that is at the bottom. So even though they all increased for ozone exposure, but the degree of increase for advantaged communities increased much faster. That means the overall EJ was reduced from 2012 to 2019 on ozone exposure. So that's what we have done for exposure assessment and some of the initial analysis of EJ. So now when you shift gears to the health data set and health outcome modeling, I will pass the presentation to Dr. Barrett.
Great, thank you, Jason. And do you want to take any questions now or save them all for the end? Jason, do you prefer to take questions now or save them for the end?
We can wait.
Okay, so that would be good. We can better control the time.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. Again, I'm Meredith Barrett, VP of Population Health Research at ResMed, and they're a global digital health company focused on sleep and respiratory disease. And Propeller Health is one of their affiliate companies. I've been working with Propeller for the last 10 years or so, so I've been involved in digital health research with them for quite a long time. Propeller is a digital health company focused specifically on asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and really aiming to help improve the management of asthma and COPD. And we also aim to use the aggregated data that we are collecting via the sensors to help improve public health research and understanding of some of the community level drivers of respiratory disease. So that's relevant to our discussion today. Propeller was founded about 12 years ago, and we have gone through the regulatory clearance, so have about 10 FDA clearances for the sensors and the platform, as well as the analytics. And then we also have regulatory clearances through the EU, Canada, and Australia. And to date, we've enrolled about 150,000 people with asthma and COPD to the platform in the United States and more abroad. But we have really focused on research and using the data, trying to use the data for good, both for individual patients and clinicians, and then also for public health research, really from the beginning. So happy to share any of our other types of research after the meeting. So next slide, please, Jason. So just so that we have an understanding of what exactly the Propeller system is and how it collects data before we get into the analysis. The main hardware component of the Propeller platform is the sensors, and you can see some of them pictured here. They are sensors that are Bluetooth enabled, and so they fit onto inhaled medications for asthma and COPD, and then they're able to wirelessly sync and send data on actuations of the medication to a smartphone. The sensors can also sync with a wireless hub, and so that means that people who do not have access to smartphone technology can also still participate in programs with the wireless hub plugged in at their home, and so that does help enable those without technology access. The sensors store the date, time, and location and the number of puffs, or the sensors collect that information, sync with the smartphone or the hub, and are able to collect the date, time, GPS location, and the number of puffs. And then all of that information is securely transmitted to the servers. Once on the servers, then we're able to merge that with environmental data, pollen, weather data, other socioeconomic variables as well, and that's really with the goal of running analytics on the back end to be able to then provide that information back to patients through a mobile app and a web dashboard, as well as do some of the research like we're doing in this project. And the goal is really to be able to help better understand specific unique individuals' triggers and trends over time, help promote their adherence to controller medications, and also help to reduce their reliance on the rescue medications. And then that information, again, is shared to patients. It's also, if the patients opt in to share their data with their provider, we can also share it with their clinical providers, and then patients can also add in caregivers as well to help with self-management. So it's a objective and passively collected inhaler use data, essentially. So next slide, please. And we've developed several sensors that fit over about 90% of the different form factors of inhalers on the market. And of course, this is always shifting. So we're constantly developing new form factors. But we do make an attempt to cover both the rescue medications as well as the maintenance medications that are on the market. So both the medications that people take to get relief for acute symptoms, and then also those maintenance medications to help maintain control of their disease. Next slide, please. So tracking this rescue use can be quite helpful for an individual, again, trying to inform their self-management as well as some clinical care. And I mentioned that based on that signal of the GPS location and the time, we can then add in the context of where that rescue medication use occurred. And so in the platform, we pull in air quality data and pollen and weather, as I mentioned. When we work with researchers such as Jason, then Jason, for example, was able to bring in all of those very, very finely resolved layers of air pollution exposure to improve that exposure assignment. I did want to mention that the sensor also sends a regular signal to the smartphone and to the hub, so we're able to know when the sensor is still active and the battery life is fine, but the sensor has not been used, and so it's actually a record of non-use, which is an important signal as well. And so that Jason, for example, in his analysis has used both those counts of rescue medication use puffs per day, but also the non-uses is also an important signal. Okay, next slide, please. So the rescue signal, or SABA, so short-acting beta agonist signal, is actually quite useful to monitor in our research. It's a very frequent outcome in a number of studies and clinical trials, and it essentially can be considered sort of like a proxy for symptoms. On average, in the Propeller data, we see patients using about 1 puff a day, so it is a very frequent outcome. And rescue inhalers and SABAs are used for acute relief of asthma symptoms, such as shortness of breath, coughing, or wheezing, and they may, again, serve as a proxy for these symptoms. They've also been shown to be an important marker of asthma control, so as well as feature adverse outcomes and asthma exacerbations. So they can be indicative of a worsening event, but then also predictive of future exacerbations as well. And they also correlate well with clinically validated self-reported assessment tests, such as the asthma control test and the COPD assessment test. I think it's also interesting to consider the signal as as a signal to use in epi research and as well as for policy considerations. I think there's a number of additional benefits to consider, such as that it's passively collected, and so it doesn't necessarily rely on patients doing sort of burdensome diaries or record keeping. It's also objective, so it doesn't rely on an individual's recollection of when they went to the hospital, for example. It's also, it can be, again, placed precisely in space and time, so we can get the GPS location down to within 10 meters and get a precise time as well. And it also is a very proximal and kind of real-time signal representing symptoms in a patient's daily life. So it can kind of represent a little bit more closely the kind of lived experience of someone with asthma or COPD managing their disease on a daily basis. And I think it's a complement to, it will never be a replacement for, but it's an interesting complement to the very important data on asthma and COPD related emergency department visits and hospitalizations and cost, which are obviously, acute events, but very important to track as well. But I think the symptom data is something that's a little bit more kind of that day-to-day experience with the disease again. Okay, next slide. So in this analysis, there were a total of 3,386 patients that were included in Jason's analysis throughout California. 89.6% of which had asthma, so it was largely an asthma cohort. About almost 70% of them were female, which we have seen in a number of our studies. We do tend to see more engagement in digital health by female participants. Mean age of 37, and about 67.7% of the cohort had a controller medication logged in their regimen data. So that means they had both a rescue medication use and a maintenance controller medication that they were taking. And so in terms of baseline disease impact, now the baseline impact here is sort of combined based on categories of the asthma control test and the COPD assessment test, which I'll just walk through in a second. But if you can go back to the previous slide, Jason. I just wanted to point out that so about 9.4% had low impact categories in their disease, 67.5% moderate, and about 23% had high or very high impact due to their asthma or COPD. So about 90% of participants had at least some moderate impact of their disease. And when you think about that on the next slide, when you look at that as how it's evaluated by the asthma control test and the COPD assessment test, Jason was able to kind of bin those and categorize them so that they could be combined into the same model. But we do see that those folks with kind of the medium impact with asthma control test scores of 10 to 19, those would be considered uncontrolled, to have uncontrolled asthma. Okay, next slide. So now we're going to get into some of the analysis, and I'll walk through the first few slides, and then when we get to the modeling part, I'll hand it back over to Jason. So just in terms of how this was conducted, so each unique space-time location of a rescue medication use and or one of those regular kind of heartbeat signals, which I mentioned before is essentially a signal from the sensor saying, I'm here, I'm working, I haven't been used in the last 3 hours, for example. And we do get the date and time from those signals. So it's, again, that signal of non-use. But it does, because we get the date and time, it can help us better round out that daily pattern and daily activity of the user to help us better understand the daily exposure patterns. And so all of those events, the rescue medication use and those sync heartbeat signals, were assigned exposure from the daily concentration services that you just heard about how Jason produced those, but nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, PM2.5, and ozone based on both the day as well as the closest location match. And for days without a rescue medication use or a heartbeat, we use the geocoded home address as sort of the default for assigned daily air pollution exposure. So all of those unique values within a single day, say there were 10 different rescue medication uses in different locations throughout the day, those would be assigned air pollution exposure values, and then they would be averaged for each individual user per day. So then you'd have a mean air pollution exposure value for each air pollutant per day. And the study outcome per day per user was the daily sum of rescue medication puffs or events per person. Okay. So there were 115,057 days with puffs and events and night events. So these are just considering the days in the analysis that had at least one of these either puffs, events, or night events. So puffs equate to actual actuations of the medication. Events are combined puffs. So we might have, say you have 4 puffs within a 2-minute window, those would be combined into an event. So it's just another way of kind of aggregating the puff data. But we do look at both because you can start to see a little bit more variability in the puff data as well. We also look at nighttime events because nighttime events can be nighttime rescue medication use can be indicative of worsening asthma control. And so among those days with any of these events, we saw a mean count per day of 4 puffs a day, or 2.4 rescue events, or 0.46 nighttime events. 75th percentile was 5, 3, and 1 for puffs, events, and night events, respectively. And there were some high numbers as outliers as well, but Jason caps those in the analysis so they don't overly influence the results. Next slide. So you can see just in the distribution of these events, of the puffs and events, the daily rescue puffs are primarily less than, definitely less than 20, but tend to be in the much smaller range, in the sort of 0 to 5, 0 to 10 range, which is quite normal and very consistent in the data set. But you do see that, again, kind of that frequent, more consistent use of the rescue medication use. Okay, next slide. So in terms of total days in the analysis, there were over 531,000 patient days for the full study period, and so that includes days with and without rescue medication use. Across those days, there was a mean of 8 ppb for nitrogen dioxide, 10 micrograms per cubic meter for PM2.5, and 35.4 ppb for ozone. And then puffs, when aggregated over this full study period, so again, incorporating both the days with events as well as those 0 event days, of course will be lower, but it's also helpful to see how that gets the distribution of those events over the entire study period. And that was about 0.864 puffs per day, or 0.5 events, or 0.09 nighttime events. And then Jason also controlled for weekly SABA use, weekly rescue use, to essentially as kind of a weekly risk variable. And that was really to try to adjust for any ongoing asthma control status or COPD burden of the participant. He was really aiming to look for that kind of incremental impact of the air pollution exposure beyond their kind of baseline rescue medication use patterns. So of all the weeks in terms of that risk level, there were 6.5% of the weeks that were considered high. And it's also good to see that the data days were fairly well dispersed across seasons, because we definitely need to consider seasonality in the data as well. And just one last slide in terms of how that weekly risk was calculated. Again, this was Jason's way of kind of controlling for the ongoing asthma control and COPD burden. He looked at weekly SABA use and categorized weeks with less than or equal to 2 SABA use days per week as low, 3 to 6 days per week as medium, and everyday use as high. And again, there was about 6.5% of weeks with that high level of use. Okay, and now I will hand it over to Jason to run through the model.
Thank you, Meredith. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So Dr. Burr just introduced this is a weakening risk, but I think this is very important for us. We wanted to see the signal of the impact of air pollution on rescue medication use. We want to get rid of the potential impact of patient internal risk or rescue medication use, right? So we might over control the impact, but at least through this way, we only focus on the impact of air pollution and the rescue medication use, get rid of the impact of internal patients, the severity of the disease. So for our modeling process, we use GL. It's generalized linear mix model, TMB. The reason we use that, I can explain more later, is that because the outcome is number of puffs. So the number of puffs might have a lot of days a patient might not use anything. So the problem have excessive zeros, right? So also the variations might be big between days that have huge dispersion. And then in this way, we use GL MMTMB to control zero inflation and also overall dispersion. We built two types of models. One type is through the individual pollutants. So for NO2, PM2.5, and ozone, we build separate models. So the confounding control, including the like individual age, gender. We do not have race ethnicity information. It's incomplete. But we also, like I said, we have weekly impact for individual patients. We have also the baseline ACT or CAT scores. We also controlled for the meteorological conditions, temperature, relative humidity, and also the season's impact. So, the one I showed you is for a single pollutant model. We also build the models with simultaneous exposure to NO2, PM2.5, and ozone. So for us, like I can go over here, if for any model you want to integrate multiple pollutants into a single model, you need to make sure they are not have strong collinearity. So before we do integrate them into a single model for the three pollutants, we used variation inflation factor to identify the correlation. We found that the VIF was less than 1.6. So for any of the VIF, if the less than 2.5, when they incorporate into a single model, so that means the correlation is less than 67%, I think, and then they do not have significant the collinearity. We could put them into a single model. So that's for our modeling framework, we did it that way. So we have individual pollutant models, but also simultaneous exposure to PM2.5, ozone, and NO2. Like I said before, for the model, why we use the GLMMTMB, the model is that because for the model, we find how significant zero inflation a lot of days without outcome or outcome being zero. So they have zero inflation. But also we try to identify the dispersion. So we found the dispersion parameter or the significance is 0.99. So it's less than 1.2 or 2.3. So they do have zero inflation, but not a series of dispersion. So the mean not significant different from the overall variation of the outcome. So so we could not use a negative binomial model. So through that process, the gel MMTMB, we for the individual model, you can see the NO2 was found significant. For the PN 2.5 model, we also found significant impact. For the ozone model, they're not significant. So overall, you can see at the incidence rate is over 1, but the 95% confidence interval is not significant. Sorry. We also developed a model that integrated 3 pollutants together. But you can see right now, NO2, PM 2.5, and ozone were all found significant associated with rescue medication use in PAFs. So to verify our results, we also used random forest modeling technique. For those of you are familiar with random forest modeling, it's kind of the black box, the machine learning algorithms that do not assume the assumption like data structure, linear, non-linear, or whatever. Also, the random forest model is resistant to model overfit, multicollinearity, and interaction. So they have shown the enhanced prediction power. But for us, our main goal is try to do a sanity check to make sure the results are similar to what we have done through the GL MMTMB. So this is the results. We basically confirmed our results. So summary of the health outcome modeling results. You can see like I said, for NO2 and PM 2.5, both were significant, but for ozone, it was not significant. But if we are simultaneous exposure to the 3 criteria pollutants, all the pollutants we find significant in the association with rescue medication use. So for us, what we modeled is per unit increase. Like for NO2 is per ppb, for PM 2.5 is per microgram per cubic meter, and ozone is the per ppb increase. We convert this per unit increase to what a literature normally used, and also those ones presented in our literature review. For NO2, we used per 10 ppb increase. For PM 2.5 is 10 microgram per cubic meter, and also for ozone is per 30 ppb increase. So the results is found is around 2.5, 9.1, and 17.2, respectively for NO2 and PM 2.5 and ozone. The effective were relatively low, but not that much low, a little bit low to the from the literature what we got. So I think the reasons what we had is, okay, for most of the studies, it doesn't matter what kind of studies, what we have seen before, and most of the studies use home address as location exposures, right? But for our study, for those days without rescue medication use, the outcome is 0. But we use the home address as exposure. Those days still have exposure. So for us, we basically try to identify those above those baseline exposure. The level of exposure is above the baseline exposure. So the scope of impact of air pollution is smaller. So that might create one effect. So it's a smaller effect. The second thing is rescue medication use is relatively mild. So like Dr. Barrett said, it's probably like a daily event. The compare those more acute events like ED visit, hospitalizations, or deaths. So those severe events might have great impact of air pollution, and also a lot of them are kind of aggregated in a way, not like us, the daily exposure modeled in a very refined way. And also the other reason for the participants, what we have the baseline impact or weekly risks are relatively low. So relatively healthy participants. So therefore, the impact from air pollution might be possibly smaller. Now now we are shifting gears again. Okay, this is the economic benefits analysis. So for us, okay, we identified air pollution daily for years 2012 to 2019. For the economic benefits, what we wanted to analyze is if the air pollution be improved from 2012 to 2019, what's the benefits associated with the reductions of air pollution? For this, in this way, we calculate the benefits at the census tract level. I could not go just like 2012 entire California to 2019 entire California, because the large squads or large proportion of the air pollution of the air quality level are the places without any human beings, like forests, right? So what we did is that we used the census tract from 2012 to 2019, consider the air pollution or air quality change from 2012 to 2019. But due to the large swaths of the places might be like parks or forests, so we calculated the improvement of air pollution from 2012 to 2019 at the census tract level, but only for residential areas. So those are the places have the highest impact on normally where people live and have activities. So, so once we calculated the improvement of air quality from 2012 to 2019 at a residential area for each census tract, we have, like I introduced before, we had the CR functions, right? You have how much air quality you improved, what's the CR function? So we calculate the reductions or rescue puffs per person per day. So that's reduction per person per day. But how to get it to the overall population? Then we use CDC 500 cities project. So it has current asthma prevalence at the census tract level for people ages 18 and over. We use people ages 18 and over because for this study, most of the participants or patients, they were adults. So once we know the prevalence and also the for the prevalence by CDC at the census tract level, and also the total population of each census tract, so we can calculate the overall puffs saved overall puffs saved from 2012 to 2019 for any single census tract. Obviously, even though I know the CDC 500 cities project covers majority of the population in California, so it's around 26.7 million population in California. I think we have 39. I just use the proportion to generate up. So to calculate puffs saved, so it is okay. You have the air. We are talking about census tract level. You have census tract level air pollution improvement. You have the CR function, and then that calculates the puffs saved due to reduction air pollution. You times how many the asthma population in that sensor tract. Then you talk about total puffs saved for that sensor tract. You then times 365. That's the total puffs saved for a sensor tract across a year. That's puff saved. Okay. Once you have the total puffs saved, then we can calculate how number of people avoid rescue medication use. Because on average, asthma patient is 0.86. So you go through 365. So you divide by 0.86 times 365. That's basically the total number of people avoid rescue medication use for a year. Right. Then okay, then we have a way to calculate rescue medication being saved. So because okay, we calculate total puffs saved for a year and divided by 200. That because most of the typical inhalers, what you got is 200 doses. So you have total saved puffs divided by 200. So that's how many inhalers you can be saved. You times 74 because that's based on the I think 2020 cost for one inhaler. So that's the how many costs could be saved from reduced rescue medication use. Okay, that's the rescue medication use. Another thing is medical care. So for medical care, there's one research fund like ED visits, hospitalization, your doctor visits, the prescription fund that in US, each asthma patient is around 3,266, but the medication care, medical care, not medication, medical care does not include mortality. Okay, medical care is for one asthma patient is 3,266. If you have that many patients being avoided for rescue medication use, that means they won't go to, they won't seek any medical care. So you can calculate total cost saved from avoiding medical care. And so there's another thing is total cost saved from missing work days or not performing well due to asthma. So there's one research found that we have around cost is around $2 billion for over 14 million missed work days or not performing well. For all the asthma patients in US, then if 2 billion we divided by total asthma, current asthma patients for that year, then we find the missed work days cost for per asthma patient. And then you times the number of people being avoided rescue medication, and then you got the total cost saved from missing work days. So this is the overall, but now going into detail. So we use the 500 cities project. So 500 cities, you can see I use those highlighted blue, light blue colors. Those are the sensor tract centroids of 500 cities projects cover. So basically the cover majority of the places with high population density for Los Angeles, and also the Los Angeles, that over there, southern part is Orange County, and also San Francisco Bay. They cover most of the census tracts. So that means our research should be valid based on what those procedures, what I introduced before. So we can have puffs avoided for NO2, PM2.5, ozone individually, and NO2 plus PM2.5 and also NO2 plus PM2.5 plus ozone. We checked the second row, okay, for puffs, avoid for NO2 plus PM2.5 is around 8.2 million puffs. Within the parentheses, the confidence intervals. But once you do NO2 plus PM2.5 plus ozone, they are reduced. The reason was that because the ozone level didn't decrease from 2012 to 2019. Instead, they increased. So that created a negative effect for ozone. When you add them up, it's around 6.6 million puffs avoided.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're getting close to our time at 4 o'clock. So I hope we can wrap up. This is very exciting work. We do want to give some time for people to ask questions. So I think you've only got a few more slides, right, Jason?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you. So number of people saved, so the same thing did individual pollutants, NO2, PM2.5 add up, and also the 3 pollutants. So we can avoid around 26,000 people avoided using rescue medication use throughout the entire year. Okay, now going to the actual cost. For rescue medication use cost is $3 million for NO2, PM2.5. When you go to 3 pollutants, a little bit lower. When the total medical cost, so for NO2, PM2.5, you can go to 85 million. So when you add also ozone is a little bit lower. Then total missed work days, so it's around work days the cost. The total is around 2.1 million for NO2 plus PM2.5. When you add them up, it's around 1.7 million. So conclusion of our research. So we generated comprehensive data source for air pollution exposure modeling. We integrated government monitoring, saturation monitoring, and Google Street Car monitoring into a single modeling framework. We applied deletion, substitution, addition, algorithms successfully generated high precision daily air pollution models and also surfaces. So for the rescue medication use, we identify space-time rescue medication use and activity space of participants. So we modeled successfully association of rescue medication use with air pollution exposure. We found air pollution exposures largely significant associated with rescue medication use for both separately individual pollutants and simultaneous exposure. So we also identified the disparity existed, but the carbon regulation efforts, the degree of disparity is lessened. This project provides information needed to including rescue medication use as a new endpoint for CARB's health analysis. So we also have expansion analysis. So we have other projects. We also might propose to CARB for further research in the future. So thank you for your time. Sorry, this is kind of getting long, but thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Su and Dr. Barrett, for your very nice presentation. There are some questions in the chat, so I can read them. Any study for trace amounts of organics? It's in the chat, the first one. If there's any study for trace elements.
Is it trace metals?
No, just trace amount of organics.
No, we only focus on the criteria, pollutants, NO2, PM2.5, and ozone.
But the data summaries at the beginning of the study, all EPI studies.
Yes. Environmental EPI focus on acute effects.
Okay. The next one is, why did you not consider purple ear individual ear monitors?
Okay, so we could, but there's 2 issues. So first, we wanted to have something. Purple ear have have improved time, but the quality of the purple air is still an issue considered or compared to gold standard air quality monitoring, right? So what we got it's the saturation monitoring and also the Google Street Car monitoring that have much higher precision compared to purple air monitoring. Purple air still have some issues, not only the measurement issue, but the handling issue by the individual.
Okay, thank you. Then the questions. It appears that the rate of reduction for NO2 PM2.5 and ozone exposure from 2012 to 2019 for all three pollutants is substantially higher than the rate of reduction of ambient air quality readings across the same time frame. Why is that?
I still don't get it's the rate of reduction. I know PM2 ozone was substantially higher than the rate of reduction of ambient air quality.
Yeah.
From the okay, yeah. Okay, for us, the reductions are based on sensor tract level reduction for residential area for each sensor tract.
Okay.
So that's I think probably we won't be based on okay, I could see this issue. Do you know why it was higher? Because most of the air quality monitors that are located at background concentrations that do not have the spatial gradients, what we identified based on our model. So we at the sensor tract level, we have for each sensor tract, you will have air pollution concentrations. So variations would be higher. So overall rate would be higher from 2012 to 2019.
Okay, thank you. Was the exposure assessment with regards to just outdoor exposure?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Average ozone was 4 times higher than NO2 concentration. Did I see that? Why is that, I think? Average ozone was 4 times than NO2. I think this is in the EJ.
Yeah, this is not, yeah, correct. Ozone, the units are different, right? So for right now, the NO2 is much smaller. For NO2, if you see a place higher than 15 ppb, that would be rare or very close to highways. For ozone, you can easily see over 30, 40. In summertime, easily 60, 70.
Okay. I think we already got this. Are these results from specific age group, mainly adults, right?
Yes, mainly adults, yes.
Yeah, I think, okay, let's see if there is any questions.
I think there's one more on
okay, yeah. There was a negative correlation between the inhaler use and ozone concentration. Any explanation on that?
Okay, yeah. Now as the model is getting more and more refined, you will see more and more this research findings. NO2 is totally opposite to ozone due to the scavenger effect. For NO2, if you have close to highways, NO2 NO will react with ozone, create NO2. So for those places close to highways, the ozone level will be low, but NO2 concentration will be high. This, I think, for the research group, if you are familiar with exposure modeling, more and more research are pointing to this. So the ozone concentration is opposite to NO2 concentrations. So you will find opposite correlation and effects.
Okay, thank you. I see one raised hand, so you can unmute yourself and yeah, okay,
yes.
There you go.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Lonnie Mason. I'm the executive director of first generation environmental health and economic development based out of the Bayview Hunters Point community. Jason, appreciate your work and your effort and what you put in, to gather this statistical data. But being an asthma individual, having asthma myself, and over half of my family, I can't agree with some of the statistical data that you have, that correlates within our community. I don't know how you got that data, especially when it comes to the PM 2.5. I would like to know the route these Google vehicles took within the Bayview Hunters Point community. Also, the Cowlin viral screen is totally incorrect. We made that clear to them many a time because there's certain areas, specific areas. Mainly, we have a cement factory. We have a garbage company factory. We have Hanson that deals with gravel. And there, it doesn't even cover that area. The Cowlin viral screen is specifically, it doesn't even cover the area with the sewage plant. It takes up 80% of the sewage in San Francisco. The Cowlin viral screen doesn't even cover that area, particular block. And so I'm trying to, because see, here's the thing, over half of my family has asthma. Half, significant part of my family. So I'm looking at these statistical data and I'm looking at the disadvantage. I don't even see it, within the area where, I don't even see it on the map as far as the Bayview Hunters Point community at all. So the Dr. Tompkins, Dr. Raymond Tompkins is not on here. He's the scientist, in our community. And I'm sure if he was on here, he'll be able to, correlate those statistical data for you and break it down to you from a scientific standpoint, because he's actually done the research. But I know for a fact that this is not accurate, totally inaccurate. And this is the problem that we have, that agency goes out and they choose someone to come in our community to do these statistical data when they're not even aware of our community. They don't know. So that's where they should be partnering with someone in the community who can direct them, in the location where we have significant, for instance, in that area over there, the wind is so strong in that area. And you guys have to realize we have a naval radiological building, department that was set up to help assist create the Hiroshima bomb that is still there within our community. And people are being affected year round. I lost a few family members just recently, especially my cousin 5 years ago, and I don't want to go into that because it brings back too much memory because it makes me upset. But I'm just looking at the statistical data. It's totally inaccurate. I want to know how you guys came up with that, especially when it comes to the P1, P2.5 and the, what was the green, it was in the data. I was looking at it because it didn't seem high enough. And both of those data, it just didn't seem high enough. And, no disappointment, nothing against you, but it was hard to follow along because of your accent. I know everybody else may not want to say so, but it was just difficult, but I was able to read some of the statistical data and see, but your accent was strong. And so it was kind of hard, for us, me to pinpoint some of the things that you were saying. But that's all I had to say. I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to know, especially, whoever, can provide this information, where did those, because I see those cars, they're going down 3rd Street, but that's all I see them, just going down 3rd Street. But I don't see them in other parts of the neighborhood. And so I would like to know their routes. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
So I'd like to respond, and I know we're getting close to the time, but my name is Bonnie Holmsden, and I'm the branch chief in the Air Board for our health exposure Health and Exposure Assessment branch. And we're really pleased to be able to have this seminar. We're very pleased to have Dr. Jason Su and colleague Meredith Barrett be able to present this important information. I wanted to say that we'd be happy to get back to Lonnie and anybody else that has specific questions. We'd be happy to get back to you with additional information. I don't think we have the time, unfortunately, set aside today because we have, I want to give Jason and Meredith time to respond, but we may have to go over a little bit, but I don't know we have time to go into maybe the level of depth that would fully explain the study. So I'd be happy to get back to you and or set up a separate discussion. And I would ask Meredith and Jason if they could participate. We'd be happy to set up a separate discussion.
And I appreciate that. Can I say that if this is important, you say it's important data, right? That's true. But we wanted it to be accurate, important.
Yeah, of course. And this has been conducted to a very high level of scientific standards, and we'd be happy to go over that and get your input and ideas. I did want to give you just a little bit of context in that it is a statewide study. It is not focused on a specific region as much as it is looking at statewide average exposures. And even though we have, even though Jason Su explained that he has a high level of what we call, facial refinement, a high level of detail regarding the locations of the asthma exacerbations and the puff, and a high level of detail regarding the air pollution levels. It still is a statewide average study. And we do have another study that's undergoing, we didn't have much time to explain it, but we have another study that's going on, and Jason Su's working on that study that's focused specifically, and Meredith's also involved, that's focused specifically in the Southern California goods movement region, and looking more specifically at the association between the asthma exacerbations and the community exposures in that area. And so we are, in addition to the statewide average study, we are doing a more community specific study. And we will be having an update on that study also. But I also wanted to provide, and I'm sorry, if I could just really finish real quickly.
Good.
I just wanted to also provide the context that while there was a lot of information presented on air pollution exposures, and the development of this exposure model is very important, the focus of this study that's being presented is on the impact of air pollution levels on asthma exacerbations and the asthma puff. And there was a lot of detail presented, but when we got to the findings at the end, the findings show a very, very significant association and a significant increase in asthma puff, meaning asthma inhaler puffs. And that translates to a significant cost for residents with asthma who are having to use these daily asthma medications, and both are at harm because of the effect of the asthma and the serious health effects, and also the economic effects of having to pay for this significant medication. So when we get to the bottom line of the study, the study is demonstrating the significant impact on a statewide basis on increasing asthma and increasing costs to communities who are most impacted by asthma. And that would include communities in the Bay Area and in the LA region that have the highest sources of pollution in their communities. So I just wanted to kind of provide that context, because there's a lot of details that we've been going through, and it may give the impression, or somehow give an impression that somehow some specific area the issues in that specific area are being downplayed. But I think what we're trying to emphasize is that we're looking at this from a statewide perspective, and that we have other studies that are looking more locally. So I'm happy if you wanted to say, if you had one more comment you wanted to make. I don't know if there was anybody else that had
but I'm aware of that. I'm aware of what you guys are doing. We've set up a toxic tour, but unfortunately they overlooked us and they went to Southern California. I made that clear to us. We were clear to them. We've been asking for this tour for some years now. That's what I don't want. I don't want us overlooked in our community.
Got it.
I am totally aware. My whole family, half of my family, we've all used those pumps.
Yes.
We've all used those pumps and used medication for our asthma. I'm totally aware. So I just want to make sure that our community is not overlooked, which has been because they just did a toxic tour in Southern California. They bypassed us when we've been asking for it for years. So I understand the what you're doing statewide, and it's on average, but I don't want our community overlooked in this process. And I want the right and accurate data, because if you don't have the right accurate data, you know, when it comes to our community, we're going to be overlooked, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
Yes, thank you for your comments. And I know that there are plans being put together to organize that toxic tour in the Bayview Hunter Point area. So I know that is in the works, and I'm sorry it was delayed. There is a great interest in having the board leadership participate in toxic tours in different areas of the state and to better understand those issues. So thank you for raising that. I think
no problem. Thank you, Doc. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Sue. I know it's a lot of work, no disrespect to you, but I appreciate your work and what you did. Thank you very much.
I just one point.
Let's let Jason and Meredith, if you have some closing comments, and then Nargis, if you have anything to close out in terms of how to access the slides and the information. So let's let Jason and Meredith have any final comments.
Yeah, I really appreciate the comments by Nani Mason. That's important, right? For this project, because we focus on sources of on-road emissions. So that's why we focused on the outdoor air pollution and mainly focused on the impact from traffic. So that was our title of the focus of the project. But we also like the Barbara and Bonnie, you have supported us. So for the common project, we will focus on Southern California, not only for the traffic air pollution, but air pollution from port operations and operations or railway system, plus the air toxic Nani Mason was talking about. So we will have majority of the sources from like the different industrial classification SIC codes will have the impact of those industrial sources, those called point sources, and the impact of people's health outcome. We'll model those ones. Not if you have interest, we can keep conversation. We'll bring you in. We also have community outreach too. So that would be great for us to keep the ball going.
Yeah, just to echo that, I appreciate the comments. I don't know if Lonnie is on still, but if there's a way to get in touch with him, I think it would be a worthwhile discussion to zoom in on the specific Bayview Hunters Point area. I know that the maps in this presentation were quite zoomed out, so it's hard to really get that detail, but I think Jason and I would both really appreciate engaging in that and, you know, hearing more, and it will also inform the community discussions that we're doing in Southern California for sure. So if anyone knows how to get in touch with him, we would definitely appreciate that. But thank you all for your support and for your interest today.
Thank you. And Lonnie, if you could, I think we have your information, but if you could just put it in the chat just to make sure that we have it handy, that would be great.
Yeah, Miss Flesher, Trish, they all know who I am. You know,
I know.
And Lisa.
And
okay.
Yeah, and you know, again, I think these seminars are set up so that anybody can, you know, put questions in the chat all along the way. If there's any questions about anything that's said, you know, we want to always encourage people to put those questions in the chat, and we have the We have the slides available for everybody to review. We'll have a recording so everybody can also review the recording. So there's lots of different ways to access the information. But I will turn it back to Nargis and see if Nargis has any closing comments.
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, Dr. Sue and Dr. Barrett, for all your nice comments. And thanks, everybody, for joining this seminar. I do want to remind that you can also send your questions to my email at nargis.jareen. I'm going to put it here in the chat. So, so any questions that was not addressed here, you can definitely send it to my email and we'll take care of that. Okay, so we are over time. Thank you, everybody. So thank you. Have a good afternoon. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Bye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you,
Take
everyone.
care.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.